Hey guys, tonight we slip into a world of mud, empire, and defiance. You're not just watching history, you are history. You wake up in the wet grey mists of Roman Britain, lying stiffly on a mat that smells of horsehair and damp earth. Your name is Boudica, though the Romans will butcher the spelling and pronunciation for centuries to come. And today, the weight of an empire sits on your chest, figuratively and occasionally, quite literally. Your home isn't a palace. It's a thatched hall ringed with wooden spikes. You hear pigs grunt in the mud and warriors mutter over half-spilled ale. The smell is wood smoke, sweat, and a bit of sheep. It's not exactly glamorous, but it's your world. You are queen of the Iceni, a Celtic tribe clinging to independence on the chilly fringe of Rome's reach. Your people wear cloaks of wool. Your warriors tattoo their arms, and your gods demand offerings that sometimes include chickens, sometimes enemies. But you've just woken to the realization that nothing is truly yours. Not your land, not your gold, not even your body. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments. What's your location and what time are you listening to this? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Rome doesn't knock, it marches. It builds roads directly into your territory, sets up garrisons near your sacred groves, and taxes the air you breathe. By the time your husband, King Prasutagus, finishes his morning porridge, the Romans have already audited him 6 times. They pretend to be allies. They call you client kings, which sounds fancy until you realize it means king who answers to our governor. You host their dignitaries, feed their scribes, and try not to roll your eyes when they criticize your tribal laws, but you can smell it. Contempt, cloaked in Latin grammar. Still, you've been patient. When the Romans asked for tribute, you paid. When they asked for soldiers, you sent them. You even married your daughters into favorable alliances, hoping they might escape what's coming. Spoiler, they won't. You tried. Really, you did. But Prasutagus is dying. That cough that started last winter never left. His skin hangs on, him like wet cloth. And in his last moments, he does what he thinks is clever. He writes a will. He names you and your daughters as co-heirs, alongside the Roman emperor. Surely that'll keep the peace, right? It doesn't. The ink hasn't dried before Roman officials arrive like seagulls to a beach picnic. They seize the land, loot your granaries, and treat the will like a joke. You protest. Politely at first. You think the governor will intervene. He doesn't. And that's when things get personal. One morning, they drag you into the square. Roman soldiers strip you and whip you until your skin is raw and glistening. Your daughters, teenagers full of fire and terror, are assaulted in front of the crowd. You scream, not from pain, but from the helplessness, from the knowledge that every person watching will remember and do nothing. Your scars heal, but your pride doesn't. Historians still argue whether this event was sanctioned by the Roman governor, or just a few soldiers taking brutal liberties. Either way, it's not just punishment, it's humiliation meant to break you in public. But they've miscalculated, because you're a sleeper cell with a chariot license. You retreat, not in shame, but in planning. The wind hisses through the trees, and you begin to speak to other tribes. The Trinovantes, once powerful but long subdued. The Catuvelauni, restless and watching. They've all suffered under Rome. Land taken, taxes increased, sacred sites defiled. You remind them of their dead gods and dying pride. A minor Roman official reports unrest in the east, but his handwriting is sloppy, and the governor files it under peasant squabble, classic Roman mistake. You begin to change. Your walk grows steadier, your voice sharper. You braid your red hair tighter. You ride a chariot with the calm fury of someone planning to break history in half. Quirky tidbit time, the Celts believed. Warriors gained strength from their ancestors' spirits. Some wore amulets of bones, teeth, or even the dried ears of slain foes. You wear silence, you wear waiting. At night, the fires burn low. You don't sleep much anymore. You run your fingers along the edge of a blade that once belonged to your father. Its hilt is worn smooth, its edge pitted from battle, but it's real. Unlike Roman promises, your daughters sit close, whispering. They no longer ask if Rome will let them live free. They ask when the killing starts, and soon it will. You'll stand atop a mound. You'll shout words your ancestors would approve of. You'll gather an army not by rank, but by rage. They'll follow you not for glory, but for revenge. And when you march, it won't be subtle. You're not here to ask Rome for justice anymore. You're here to take it. You stand alone in your hall, the fire snapping low, your shadow thrown, large against the reed walls. Prasutagus is dead. The Romans have broken their promise, and your daughters are curled in the corner, pretending not to cry. You touch the edges of the wooden box where your late husband's will once sat, now discarded, ripped apart, laughed at by Roman bureaucrats who scribbled invalid in neat Latin across the papyrus. You think about that word, invalid, as if your family, your sovereignty, your right to exist is a clerical error. This is the moment your bones begin to harden. It's a strange thing, planning an uprising between chores. You still feed your pigs, grind your grain, nod to the elders, but under it all, the storm builds. You're not a stranger to hardship, but this is systemic humiliation, wrapped in Roman law and sealed with smug superiority. It's the difference between a raid and an occupation, between a rough year and the erasure of your people. That will, that fragile little loophole Prasutagus wrote, was supposed to protect you. You probably argued with him about it. You probably said, Rome won't care. He probably said, we have to try. And maybe, just maybe, part of you wanted to believe the empire had a shred of decency. Jokes on you. Because Rome, as it turns out, hates paperwork unless they're the ones writing it. The moment Prasutagus died, the Romans declared all his lands res publicae, public property of Rome. Never mind your lineage, your queenship, or your daughter's right to rule. To them, you're just another annex waiting to happen. And since you didn't have a penis or a Latin name, the law wasn't going to side with you. Historians still argue whether this seizure was part of a broader imperial strategy or just a convenient land grab executed by greedy administrators. But honestly, does it matter? The result's the same. Your people are now squatters on their own soil. And you? You're livid. You start quietly, as queens do, not with swords, but with side eyes. You gather your tribal leaders, your war chiefs, your seers. You light fires and speak in riddles. You pour honey into bitter herbs and tell the people to stay ready. You also send messengers, fast, cloaked, suspiciously quiet messengers, to your neighbors, tribes that once rivaled you, mocked you, maybe even stole a few cows in friendlier times. Now they listen with different ears, because Rome has burned them too. And let's talk about the legal gymnastics of this situation. Roman inheritance. Laws were complex even for Romans. For client kings like Prasutagus, the rules were murky. Technically, he could leave property to his family. But the moment he named the emperor as a co-heir, that gave Rome an opening, a wedge, a reason to say, well, since we're already involved, fringe theory alert. Some believe Rome encouraged these wills, subtly pushing client rulers to name the emperor in hopes of a peaceful annexation when death inevitably came. It's like someone slowly moving their toothbrush into your apartment, until one day they own your house. But you're not here for soft diplomacy or metaphorical toothpaste. You're here to burn everything down. You keep up appearances for a while. You walk the markets, touch the hands of weavers, taste the berries offered by children. They see you're calm, not knowing that it's the kind of calm trees have before they fall on houses. You also begin recruiting. Not openly. Not yet. That comes later, with battle cries and paint and possibly a large bonfire or two. But now, it's whispers. You speak to warriors who've returned from Roman auxiliary service, Soldiers who know the enemy's formations, who've eaten Roman rations and hated every bite. You speak to women who carry both trauma and knowledge. You speak to druids, those shadowy advisors whose wisdom smells like incense and moss. You're building a coalition, not of armies, but of grudges. You meet with the Trinovantes, whose lands were seized under suspiciously similar circumstances. Their leader, grizzled and wearing more fur than necessary, eyes you warily. You say nothing for a long while. Then, how long will you let them? Take your children's names? And just like that, you've got an ally. Now, a quirky tidbit for your insomnia toolkit. The Celts had a legal tradition called tanistry, where succession wasn't always from parent to child, but to the most worthy member of the extended family. Translation: leadership was more about charisma and battle skill than bloodline. You, however, carry both. You're your father's daughter and your husband's heir. You're a queen twice over, which makes Rome's dismissal all the more insulting. You wonder sometimes if they even knew who you were. They will. Back home, your daughters sharpen sticks and giggle nervously. They're scared, but they're also proud. You tell them bedtime stories that end in fire and justice. You don't mention the odds. You don't mention the Roman cavalry. You just say, "We have waited long enough." You talk to the blacksmith. He starts making more spearheads than usual. You talk to the horse breeders. Suddenly a few extra chariots appear behind your hall. You talk to the seers. One reads the flight of birds and says, "Soon." Another dreams of wolves running through Roman villas. Everything feels like it's holding its breath. And so are you. You begin to speak louder now. Not to the wind, but to crowds. You say things like, "They think we are tame." You say, "Let them find out what our silence means." You say, "The gods have not forgotten," and the people cheer. They cheer because they're angry. They cheer because they're scared. They cheer because finally, someone has said out loud what everyone's been thinking while they plow fields and pay taxes and pretend not to notice Roman patrols. Historians still debate just how much political power you held in peacetime. Some argue you were merely symbolic. Others claim you led directly. But in moments like these, the line between myth and leadership blurs, and you become something much more than either. You become the question Rome never wanted to ask. What if we push them too far? You wake before the sun, not from dreams, but from purpose, the kind that simmers in your belly and keeps your limbs humming even after a restless night. Across the village, the smoke rises from hearths and cook fires. You hear the distant grind of millstones and the bark of a restless dog. It's all so ordinary, so beautifully, maddeningly ordinary. But you're not here for ordinary anymore. Today, the Romans are going to learn something about consequence. You hitch your cloak tighter, pulling it close against the morning chill. You walk toward the edge of your camp where your daughters wait, silent and still. Their faces are calmer now, not healed, but hardened. No one speaks of what happened to them in the public square, not out loud. It lives in glances, in clenched jaws, in the way their fingers dig into the fabric of their tunics. You nod once, and they follow you. You call a council, but it's not one of those polite Roman things with scrolls and grapes. It's held standing. No one sits. You speak plainly. You don't waste breath on poetry. You say, "They beat me. They shamed my blood. They mocked our gods. I will return the favor." And the silence that follows is louder than any applause. Some of the older warriors nod, not because they agree, but because they expected this. They've seen the signs, the restless people, the bitter taxes, the Roman arrogance thick in the air. One of them spits on the ground and says, "About time." Still, not everyone's convinced. Some whisper that the Romans are too strong, that they have better armor, better weapons, and terrifying discipline. And they're not wrong. But you don't need to beat Rome at being Rome. You just need to make them bleed long enough that they rethink what's worth conquering. Let's hit the mainstream history for a moment, because even the driest textbooks admit this part's real. Sometime around or CE, you, Boudica, queen of the Iceni, became the face and fire of the greatest revolt Rome would face in Britain. Your uprising would leave tens of thousands dead, torch major Roman cities, and scare the sandals off some of the empire's best generals. And it starts right here, not with weapons, but with words. You start holding rallies, not the Roman kind with senators in togas, but the Celtic kind, loud and dusty, full of smoke and sweat and curses aimed toward the horizon. You stand tall on a mound, your red hair unbound, your face painted with streaks of woad. Your chariot rolls up beside you, 2 horses foaming at the mouth and clearly annoyed that nobody offered them breakfast. And then you speak. Quirky tidbit. Break. Some accounts claim you gave your speeches from a war chariot, flanked by your daughters, with a spear in hand and vengeance in your eyes. Whether that happened or not, historians still argue. What matters is, people believed it happened, and sometimes belief is more dangerous than fact. You don't mince words. You call out every injustice, the land seizures, the taxes, the insults to your people's gods, the whips, the blood. You remind them that they were once free, that their ancestors rode these hills without asking permission, that the Roman peace is a cage with nice furniture, and you promise them something better, not safety, not riches, just revenge. The cheering is thunderous, but more importantly, people start moving. They begin bringing weapons from their homes. Farmers show up with clubs, hunters bring bows, women sharpen kitchen knives with unsettling enthusiasm. And you plan. You start small. Messengers run out to surrounding tribes, reminding them that the enemy isn't just in armor, it's in every tax collector, every Roman merchant who treats them like animals, every smirking soldier who leans too close to their daughters. Soon, your force swells. Not a professional army, but a wave of outrage with iron tips. Rome doesn't see it yet. They're distracted. Governor Gaius Suetonius Paulinus is off in Wales, busy crushing Druid strongholds on the island of Mona. He's torching sacred groves and chasing bearded mystics through fog, while you gather the kind of momentum that no imperial strategy ever accounts for. Historians still debate whether Suetonius ignored the warning signs or never got them. There's a chance local Roman officials underestimated you so badly they didn't even send reports. Or maybe they just didn't want to admit a provincial woman was about to make them look like fools. Honestly, either is on brand. And now, something strange starts happening. People who used to ignore you now call you Mother of the Nation. Warriors from other tribes pledge loyalty. Even the animals seem jittery, as if the land itself knows something's about to shift. There are rumors that statues in Roman towns start to sweat blood, that omens appear in the sky. Comets, birds flying backward, wild dogs howling at midday. Sure, it's probably just coincidental weirdness, or a bad mushroom day. But in times like these, every weird coincidence becomes a sign. Back in your village, the preparations take on a rhythm. Spears are stacked like firewood. Shields are carved with snarling faces. Someone has even trained a few pigs to run under. Roman carts and panic the horses. It's not exactly textbook warfare, but it's yours. Your daughters ride beside you now. They've stopped flinching. They wear their hair like yours, loose, long, defiant. You've taught them that survival isn't silence, it's movement. You dream of fire a lot, of torches and collapsing roofs, and the sound of Latin being screamed by men too stunned to understand what's happening. You don't tell anyone, but every time you dream it, you wake up smiling. One morning, a scout returns, breathless, muddy, eyes wild. They've left Camulodunum undefended, he says. No garrison, just settlers. You nod slowly, and then you smile. It's time. You don't leave quietly. There's no sneaking off into the night, no delicate departure. When you march, it's thunder. Your chariots rattle, your warriors chant, your horses kick up clouds that cling to your skin and taste like war. The target, Camulodunum, a Roman colony, settler town, model of imperial civilization. You know the type. Marble columns shipped across oceans, villas with heated floors, statues that look suspiciously smug. Rome wants it to be a symbol, proof that Britannia is tamed, housebroken, Romanized. You're about to shatter that illusion. Camulodunum once belonged to the Trinovantes. Their sacred groves stood where Roman forums now rise. Their temples were knocked down to make room for shrines to Claudius, the emperor who thought conquering Britannia would look good on his resume. Spoiler, it didn't age well. And in the center of town, the Temple of Claudius. Expensive, grand, incredibly smug. Locals call it the Oppressor's Monument. It took years to build. It's going to take you one good afternoon to burn down. Now, here's the fun twist. The settlers in Camulodunum have seen you coming. Sort of. They've heard the rumors that you're marching, that you're angry, that you're not just one tribe, but many. But instead of sending for serious reinforcements, they write a polite little note to the Roman commander in Londinium and try to raise a militia, made mostly of retired soldiers and merchants who think yelling, "Jupiter save us," is a combat strategy. To defend the city, they dig a trench, one trench, against tens of thousands of warriors. You'd laugh if it weren't so tragic. Fringe theory time. Some scholars suggest the Romans genuinely didn't expect native resistance to be organized. They thought their cultural superiority would act like a shield, a kind of psychological immunity. But they forgot something crucial. Humiliation is an incredible unifier. You ride toward the city with banners high. Your warriors scream your name. And when Camulodunum's outer farms go up in flames, no one mistakes your intentions. This isn't a protest. This is vengeance with choreography. The battle is almost too easy. Camulodunum wasn't built to withstand a siege. It was built to impress visiting senators. Its walls are ornamental. Its guards are underpaid. When your warriors crash into the streets, there's chaos, not a clash of armies, but of worldviews. The Romans don't understand what's happening. Some try to hide, others pray. A few attempt to fight, but their tactics dissolve in the chaos of your onslaught. You don't stop for temples. You don't stop for nobles. You go straight to the heart. The Temple of Claudius becomes a fortress for about 2 days. The Romans hole up inside, hoping reinforcements will arrive. They won't. Not in time. Your warriors encircle the structure, pound its doors, smear ash and paint across their faces. The flames come next. Slow at first, then eager. The roof caves in. The marble cracks. The oppressor's monument becomes a funeral pyre. Now here's your historical anchor. Even Roman historians like Tacitus admit this attack happened. They write about the sacking of Camulodunum in breathless horror. Some sources claim the entire colony was wiped out. Buildings razed, civilians slaughtered. Others say a few fled, but the city as a Roman outpost was finished. Historians still argue whether you ordered every house burned, or if your army simply got enthusiastic. Honestly, either fits. You don't linger. You don't carve statues to commemorate it. You don't build a palace from Roman rubble. You move on. Next target, Londinium. But you pause, just briefly, in the ashes. You look at your daughters. Their faces are streaked with soot and something colder than joy. You realize this isn't just your revenge anymore. It's become something much larger, a kind of cultural exorcism. You've woken something up in the land and it's hungry. Quirky tidbit. Archaeologists have found a thick layer of burnt soil under modern-day Colchester, Camulodunum's Roman name. So consistent it's referred to as the Boudican destruction layer. It's basically your signature in carbon. You left your mark in a way no bronze statue ever could. Imagine that, your anger fossilized. You regroup outside the ruins. Your army is giddy, not drunk on victory, but validated. They fought Rome and won. The myth of imperial invincibility has cracked, and the sound it makes is contagious. Even tribes that hesitated before are now sending messengers. More warriors join. More horses, more chariots, more women who refuse to stay behind. You welcome them all. You're not forming an army, you're building a wildfire. And Londinium is dry grass, Somewhere to the south, Suetonius finally hears what's happening. He turns his legions around, marching with brutal speed. But you have a head start, and you have momentum. Meanwhile, in Londinium, Roman officials are panicking. The governor's aides debate whether to defend the city or evacuate, but Suetonius, pragmatic as always, makes a hard call. Abandon it. You don't know this yet, but when you get there, the people left behind will be mostly civilians and a few unlucky troops. No coordinated defense, just more symbols, more marble, more Roman ego waiting to be crushed. And you? You're already on the move again. You travel fast now, faster than Rome expects. The roads they built to move legions? You use them to move rage. The landscape blurs, trees flicker past, hills roll by like silent witnesses, and ahead, smoke, sweet, coiling, promising. You taste it in the back of your throat. You raise your hand, signal the halt, and whisper something to your horse. Next one burns too. You arrive at Londinium like a storm that knows exactly where to land. There's no fanfare, no gates politely opened for inspection. The city stares back at you with blank Roman stone, arched bridges, tiled roofs, statues of smug emperors you've never respected and never will. And under all that, a hum of fear. The Roman governor, Suetonius, has already evacuated the city's elites. He took his troops, his officials, and anyone important enough to matter. To him, what's left behind? Merchants, artisans, slaves. A few desperate soldiers who drew the short straw and stayed behind to maintain order. Whatever that means when your walls are basically decorative. They say Suetonius left because he was strategically regrouping. You say it's because he knew what was coming. You don't show up with a diplomat's smile. You show up with fire in your eyes. And behind you, an army that's tasted victory and now only wants more. You don't knock. Let's paint a quick picture here. Londinium, in or CE, is a bustling trade hub. It's not yet the gleaming capital. It will become, but it's busy, profitable, and filled with Roman pride. It was founded less than 20 years ago and already has all the makings of a colonial centerpiece. Stone roads, coin mints, and baths where senators gossip while stewing, like sausages. And now? Now it's about to be a bonfire with good real estate. Your warriors descend on the city like water breaking a dam. There's no organized resistance. The remaining Roman soldiers are overwhelmed within minutes. Some fight, most die. A few flee only to be caught by your chariots later. And the rest of Londinium? They scream. They scream because they thought this city, this Roman outpost of civility, was untouchable. They scream because they were told they were safe. They scream because now they know what it feels like to be conquered. Historical sidebar. Archaeologists have also confirmed this one. Like Camulodunum, there's a distinct layer of ash and scorched debris beneath modern London, with burned timbers and melted pottery, all aligned with Boudica's march. It's not just legend, it's stratigraphy. And historians still argue whether Suetonius could have held Londinium if he stayed. Some say he saved his army by withdrawing. Others say he abandoned his duty and left civilians to die. Either way, he gave you a clear shot, and you took it. Here's a strange moment in all this chaos. Amid the fire and screaming, someone finds you. Not to beg, not to plead, but to thank you. A local, maybe a Briton forced into Roman service. Maybe a woman who lost everything to a tax collector. Maybe someone who just wanted to see the walls fall. She says, you did it. And you nod, not because you feel proud, but because there's still more to burn. A quirky tidbit for your troubles. One fringe theory claims that Roman merchants in Londinium, sensing the impending disaster, tried to bribe their way out by offering gold to your army. Legend has it, someone showed up with a chest of coins, only to be laughed out of the city before the gates fell. Whether or not it's true, you can appreciate the comedy. Rome loves its coins. You love its cities on fire. But this isn't just about revenge anymore, is it? It's about reclaiming space. Every Roman bathhouse you destroy is a reminder that your people bathed in rivers and didn't need slaves to pour water. Every mosaic floor you crush is one less reminder of an empire trying to rewrite your story in imported tiles. You pass by a forum where statues of Roman generals once stood. Now, their heads lie in the dirt. Your warriors kick them like stones. Somewhere, someone scrawls a symbol from the old tongue on the crumbling wall. You don't need Latin. You castu. Have fire. You could stop here, and some would say you should. 2 cities razed, tens of thousands dead, the Roman military thrown into disarray. But you didn't start this war to make a statement. You started it to send a message, and it's not finished yet. Next up, Verulamium, another Romanized settlement, another shrine to imperial arrogance. It's farther north, past the smoke and ash you leave behind. But it won't take long to get there. Your army, no, your movement, grows stronger with every mile. And unlike Rome's trained, salaried legions, your people aren't fighting for a paycheck. They're fighting because they remember. Remember the crocodile dung sunscreen Romans used? They also used mouse brains to treat acne and carried lucky, phallic charms around their necks. Just something to keep in mind when people say Rome was the pinnacle of culture. You'll take raw freedom and war paint over mouse paste any day. That night, you camp beside the river, the orange glow of Londinium's embers still visible on the horizon. The air smells like ash and something darker. Vindication, maybe. Or grief you haven't had time to feel. Your daughters sleep close, to your side, heads resting on rolled cloaks. One of them murmurs in her sleep. Something you can't make out. Something soft. You reach out, brush a strand of hair from her face. This war isn't just for her, but she's why it started. You stare up at the stars, and for a moment, everything is still. Then you hear drums, not Roman ones, yours. The next march begins at sunrise. You leave ashes behind you. You leave silence too, the kind that hangs in the air after screaming stops and cities stop breathing. Londinium is still smouldering as you ride out, but you don't look back. You don't have time for nostalgia when your next target is already waiting. Verulamium. Now, Verulamium is different. It's not quite as Roman as Camulodunum or Londinium. Technically, it started as a native settlement, built by the Catuvellauni tribe. But Rome's influence has seeped into its walls, its markets, its rhythms. Now there are public baths, forums, amphitheaters, even little statues of Roman gods stuck where native shrines used to stand. The locals walk around in togas, like they're auditioning for citizenship. And maybe that's what hurts most. It's not just about foreign invaders anymore. It's about your own people slowly forgetting who they are. You ride harder. Verulamium sits northwest of Londinium, about miles out. For your army, an ever-expanding, mud-streaked, adrenaline-fed engine of wrath. It's basically a quick jog. You don't travel light anymore, but you travel fast. Thanks to Roman roads, ironically. And the closer you get, the more the air changes. There's something different about this march. The elation of Camulodunum is long gone. The shock of Londinium has passed. What's left now is a grim rhythm, a sense of ritual. Your warriors speak less. They sharpen blades with quiet focus. They know what to expect. And so does Verulamium. Here's a historical anchor for you. Verulamium was one of the largest towns in Roman Britain. By CE, it was already a hub of commerce and Romanized life. But it wasn't heavily fortified, because again, Rome assumed Britannia was pacified. They were very wrong. Historians still argue whether the city even tried to defend itself. Some records claim local leaders tried to negotiate. Others say they just fled. Fringe speculation says a few citizens tried hiding their valuables in wells, hoping the fires wouldn't reach that deep. Spoiler, they did. You enter the city the same way you entered the others, like thunder cracking open the sky. This time, the resistance is barely symbolic. A few archers try to stand their ground. A few brave hands grip worn spears. But your army pours through the streets like smoke, and the Roman dream of control unravels in minutes. You see it in their faces. Residents who wanted to believe in the safety of roads and laws and silver coins. Now they run barefoot through alleys, dodging falling tiles and shouts in a language they thought had disappeared. You are not a memory. You are here, and you've brought the ancestors with you. Quirky tidbit. Verulamium had an early form of a fire brigade. That's right, a Roman bucket line system, complete with tools and trained men. But when your warriors arrive with torches and the sky turns red, those brave volunteers drop their buckets and run. Can't say you blame them. Now, here's something strange. Halfway through the burning, you spot a theatre. Stone arches, half collapsed, its stage overgrown. It's Roman, yes, but it was built where native stories were once told in sacred circles, around fires. You pause, just for a breath, and then you order it raised, not because you hate stories, because you hate what's happened to yours. You ride through the marketplace, past crushed amphorae and abandoned scrolls. The rich quarter collapses under, its own decorative weight, marble facades falling like stage props. Somewhere in the smoke, someone shouts, "The Iceni are here." You don't bother correcting them. It's not just the Iceni anymore. It's the Trinovantes, the Cornovi, the Dobuni. All these tribes, once squabbling over borders and cattle raids, now marching as one because they finally found a voice loud enough to follow. And it's yours. Mainstream historians estimate over 70 Romans and sympathizers have died so far. That number's debated, of course. It's hard to keep tidy records when your scribes are on fire. But what's certain is this. Verulamium, like the cities before it, falls completely. The temples collapse. The baths boil dry. The Roman dream, once shining so confidently on this damp little island, chokes on its own ambition. And yet, even now, you know it isn't enough. Rome hasn't left. Suetonius still lives, and he's not hiding anymore. Word reaches your camp just after the smoke settles. The Roman governor has gathered his forces, those who survived Mona, the legions he saved by abandoning Londinium. He's found open ground, high ground, and he's waiting for you. It's not a trap, it's a confrontation. Finally, you stand at the edge of Verulamium's ruins and watch the sparks drift skyward. Your daughters stand beside you. One of them holds a sword now, not just as a symbol. She knows how to use it. You nod once, and the message spreads through the camp. The final battle is near. Let's close with a callback, shall we? Remember that crocodile dung sunscreen the Romans used? Well, Verulamium had vendors who sold beauty ointments made from goat fat and crushed pearls. You watch those same stalls burn to the ground and think, maybe natural aging isn't so bad. You smile, just barely. Later, under the moonlight, your people dance. Not a victory dance, a prelude. Feet stomp against the earth, chariots circle, voices rise in old songs. Songs Rome never bothered to translate. You let the fire warm your face, but your thoughts are already elsewhere, on the battlefield ahead. Suetonius is waiting. The last fight is coming. You have no illusions. You probably won't survive this, but Rome will remember you, and the land will too. Dawn creeps in like a thief, trying not to wake the warriors, but you're already up, standing barefoot in the grass, letting the dew chill your toes. You look out over the quiet plain where your army has camped for the night. Thousands of tents, smoke curling from breakfast fires, the soft clang of armor being adjusted, the murmur of final preparations. You can almost feel the tension crackling, in the air, like the moment before a thunderstorm decides to make everything someone else's problem. The Battle of Watling Street is near. That's what the Romans will call it. For you, it's just the reckoning. Let's talk location for a moment. Though the exact battlefield's still up for debate, most scholars agree it happened somewhere along the Roman road known as Watling Street. It's a long stretch of engineered perfection, slicing through southern Britain like Rome's smug signature. Suetonius, ever the tactician, picks his ground well, a narrow defile with dense woods to the back and high banks on either side. Perfect for funneling your massive, unruly force into a kill zone. You know what that means? You're walking into a trap, and you're doing it anyway, because pride has momentum, and yours is moving at chariot speed. Your scouts bring the report, early. Suetonius has around 10 men. Disciplined legionaries, veterans, shield walls that move like machines, and artillery, ballistae and scorpions that hurl sharp messages across the field. Your army? Somewhere north of 100, 000 if you believe the bards. More realistically, maybe 30 to 40, 000. Still overwhelming by the numbers, but your people aren't trained soldiers. They're farmers, smiths, hunters, survivors, brave as hell, but raw. And worse, they brought their families. Thousands of wagons and carts form a circle behind your front line. They carry children, elders, storytellers, livestock, a traveling homeland. It's beautiful. It's suicidal. You ride the line on horseback, watching your people prepare. Some smear blue woad across their cheeks. Others offer prayers to ancient gods Rome has never heard of. Your daughters ride beside you, faces stern. They've never looked more like warriors. You want to believe this is the moment, the one where everything breaks your way, but deep down, you know something's off. Let's drop a mainstream historical fact here. Roman legions were terrifyingly efficient. Suetonius arranges his troops in tight formations, backed by missile troops and cavalry on the flanks. He doesn't rely on numbers. He relies on precision, terrain, and psychological warfare. His men stand silent as your army forms, a wall of metal and discipline facing a storm of shouting freedom. You give the signal. Your chariots race forward. The ground shakes. The air splits with battle cries. And then, the slaughter begins. It's chaos. Your warriors smash into Roman shields, expecting them to break. They don't. The shield wall absorbs the charge like a sponge, then spits it back with brutal order. Your fighters get stuck in the narrow pass. There's no room to maneuver. The wagons block retreat. Arrows rain down. Roman javelins pierce through multiple bodies at once. You scream orders, but it's like shouting into a waterfall. The bodies pile fast. Historians still argue whether the numbers are accurate. Some sources claim 80 Britons died that day, while the Romans lost only a few hundred. It sounds outrageous, but the terrain makes it possible. Your army was trapped, bottlenecked, crushed under the weight of its own hope. And yet, even as the battle turns against you, even as the line crumbles, you don't flee. You charge. Sword drawn, cloak torn, voice hoarse. You ride through the blood and dust, striking down Roman after Roman, like you can personally rewrite the outcome. Your daughters follow, faces smeared with soot and grief. For a moment, just a flicker, it looks like the tide might turn, but the Romans tighten the noose, and everything collapses. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some say you rode into the final. Charge with a wild boar painted on your shield, a symbol of protection in ancient Briton belief. Others claim it was a raven for prophecy and war. Either way, it didn't stop the scorpions from finding your flank. They say your horse was hit. They say you fell. They say you rose again and kept fighting. And then, you were gone. No one really knows what happens to you. Some claim you died on the battlefield, sword still swinging. Others say you escaped with your daughters, vanished into the forest, and took poison rather than face capture. A few even whisper that you wandered north, living out your days among the Druids, becoming a myth while still breathing. Historians still argue about it, of course. No body, no grave, just legend. And sometimes that's the point. In the aftermath, Suetonius conducts a brutal mop-up. Tribes are punished. Settlements are fined, burned, restructured. Roman control tightens, but something's changed. They don't forget you, not ever. You become a ghost in their records. A ferocious woman, a barbarian queen, a reminder that even the most polished empire can be humbled by someone with a cause and a few good horses. At night, when the fires are out and the stars are clear, your people still whisper your name, not in mourning, in defiance. Children born decades later wear your name like armor. You were not a footnote, you were a fault line. And Rome felt every tremor. Back at the battlefield, crows gather. The wagons lie shattered. The earth is soaked. Roman soldiers walk among the dead, collecting swords, stripping rings, whispering prayers to gods who barely listened. But beneath it all, beneath the ruin and the rot, there's still the sound of drums. Faint, distant, but steady. Like a promise, like a warning. You may be gone, but you are not finished. Silence lingers after the battle, thick as the smoke that clings to every bent blade and bruised tree. The wind moves slow, as if it's still afraid of waking anything. You breathe it in. You're alive. Somehow. The battlefield is far behind you now, just a ghost etched into the grass, and the nightmares of the few who survived it. You escaped, though even you aren't entirely sure how. One moment, you were in the heart of the storm, and the next, you were galloping through shadowed trees, branches clawing at your arms, your daughters at your side like flickers of memory. Your army is gone. But you are not, and that's complicated. The forest becomes your new fortress. It's not strategic. It's not planned. It just happens. Your feet hurt. Your horse limps. So you stop. The trees don't judge you. They don't ask you for vengeance or speeches. They just offer shade and silence. And right now, that's enough. You sit in the damp moss, lean your back against the bark, and close your eyes. The world spins without you for a while. Historians still argue whether you truly vanished into the woods or if this part's pure invention, legend stitched from hope. Some Roman accounts insist you poisoned yourself. Others swear you died at Watling Street, buried in a shallow grave beneath strangers. But the native oral traditions, they tell a different story. They say you disappeared on purpose because you had to. Now, here's where things get weird. You start to notice something strange in the days that follow. People are still following you. Not soldiers, not warriors, pilgrims. Men and women who survived the battle come in twos and threes, wounded, soot-covered, eyes hollow. They don't say much. They just kneel nearby, like you're the last surviving ember of something too big to explain. You never asked to be a symbol, but symbols don't ask for permission. You walk the woods together. You share roots and rainwater. You wrap yourselves in cloaks made of silence and stubbornness. A different kind of army begins to form. Let's pull in a mainstream historical note. After Boudica's uprising, Nero seriously considered pulling out of Britain altogether. That's how hard you rock the imperial boat. One queen, 3 cities, and tens of thousands of bodies. That was enough to make an emperor twitch. Eventually, cooler Roman heads prevailed, and the occupation continued. But the fear, that lingered, especially in the outer provinces. Roman governors began sleeping with a knife beneath their pillows, and in places where the trees grew thick and the hills whispered your name, Roman patrols walked a little faster. You move by moonlight now, not because you're hiding exactly, more because daylight belongs to Rome again. But the night is yours. You lead a quiet trail northward, avoiding roads, foraging as you go. It's not about reaching anywhere, it's about staying free. And here's your quirky detail for this stretch of the story. Ancient Britons believed that certain groves were sacred gateways, thin places where the veil between worlds wore down. You find one, deep in the forest, just a ring of oaks, twisted and old, with moss so soft it hushes your footsteps. You spend 3 days there. Your followers think you're praying, but you're not. You're listening to the wind, to the ground, to your own pulse, to the part of you that doesn't want revenge anymore. Just rest. Every few nights, someone brings news from the outside. Rome is rebuilding. Londinium is being fortified. The new Roman governor is cracking down harder than ever, punishing tribes that even smelled like rebellion. And the Druids? They've all but vanished. Your war may be over, but Rome is still marching. And the question bubbles up again. Quiet, but insistent. What now? There are days when you think about surrendering. Not to the Romans, please, never that. But to the idea that maybe this is your ending. Not a sword, not a speech. Just a slow fade into mist, like the queen who was once a storm. now just another shadow in the trees. But then your daughters laugh one morning, really laugh, chasing each other across a stream, soaked and wild and free. And you remember, you didn't fight just to die. You fought to live, so you don't vanish completely. You start leaving marks behind, literal ones, symbols carved into stones, circles of feathers, wolf tracks where there are no wolves, a trail only your people would understand. A breadcrumb path of rebellion, disguised as myth. Some call them warnings, others call them blessings. But the Romans, they call them curses, and they are terrified of them. You live in the in-between now, not quite queen, not quite ghost. Your name becomes taboo in Roman forts, spoken only in warnings and nightmares. But in hidden villages, over firelight and broth, children are still told stories about you, about the woman who burned cities and never bowed. One of your followers carves your likeness into a piece of driftwood. It's crude, more suggestion than portrait, but it captures something real, fierce, tired, unbroken. You smile when you see it. It's the first time you've smiled in weeks, and here's where history becomes mist. No one knows your final resting place. Some believe your bones were laid beneath an ancient oak, wrapped in fox fur and silence. Others think you reached the northern mountains and lived to be an old woman, telling your story only once, then never again. Or maybe, just maybe, you became the forest itself, rooted and watching, your soul woven into every rustling branch. But this much is certain. You didn't disappear. You echoed, through centuries, through legends, through every woman who stood. Her ground, when standing, meant falling. Rome. It stayed, sure, but it never relaxed again. And every time a soldier heard a branch snap in the dark, he wondered, was it you? You wake one morning to frost dusting the edge of your cloak, breath fogging the air like smoke from a dream that's not quite done with you. A bird calls somewhere overhead, but everything else is still. You're deeper in the wild now. So far from Roman roads, you sometimes forget what they looked like. Those straight, smug things slicing across your homeland like scars. The forest has swallowed you whole, and honestly, it's starting to feel like the only place that understands you. You are no longer running, you're dwelling, you're becoming. Some call this exile, but you know better. This is transformation. You are changing, and so is your war. The battlefield is no longer Watling Street with all its iron and fire. No, now it's slower, stranger, quieter, more dangerous. You've become a symbol, and symbols have power long after their swords are broken. Let's bring in a mainstream historical note here. Rome's propaganda machine was world-class. After your rebellion, they didn't just build walls and garrisons, they built narratives. Suetonius and later Roman writers painted you as a tragic figure. Fierce, yes, but doomed. A cautionary tale wrapped in wild hair and noble fury. To the Senate, you were something to be filed away and footnoted. To the soldiers, you were a ghost in the tree line. But to your people, you were a whisper that made the hearth fire flicker. You've set up camp along a narrow stream, water so clear you can see the tiny fish drifting like silver thoughts. Your daughters have grown leaner, tougher. You watch them clean their weapons with reverent care, and it hits you. They're no longer just your blood. They're your legacy. And whether you live or vanish or become a hawk circling above, they will carry your fury forward. Here's your quirky tidbit for this section. You start keeping a fox. It just shows up one morning, eyes bright as candlelight, and doesn't leave. It doesn't act like a pet. It's more like a nosy neighbor that's also a thief. But it follows you, sleeps near your tent, watches everything. Your people start calling it an omen. They leave offerings, bits of meat, feathers, tokens carved from bone. You never named it, but secretly you think of it as victory. Time loses its grip on you. Weeks pass, then months. You move in circles, from grove to glen, back to cave, like the rhythm of some ancient drum only you can hear. The Romans tighten their hold on the lowlands, but you rarely see them now. When you do, it's brief. A A shimmer of armor through the trees, a startled shout, then silence. You've become more than a fugitive. You're folklore. Children tell stories about the Queen of the Woods, who rides a chariot made of lightning and speaks to animals. They say she can slip through shadows like smoke. That if you whisper her name with respect, she might guard your home. That if you whisper it with fear, she might find it. Historians still argue whether your influence lingered past the rebellion, or whether it all dissolved like mist under Roman boots. But the truth doesn't live in scrolls. It lives in the people. And the people, they remember. They build shrines in secret places, circles of stone, marks carved on bark, songs passed from mother to child with lullabies that sound suspiciously like war cries sung at half speed. One evening, a girl no older than 12 approaches your camp. Her cheeks are red from wind. Her tunic's too thin for the weather, but her eyes are steady. She doesn't say much. She just asks if she can. Stay. You nod. And just like that, your following grows again. This is the shape of your life now. Not a parade of battles or fiery speeches, but slow, stubborn survival. A flame in the ash. You teach your daughters how to trap hares without being seen, how to read the clouds, how to keep silent for 3 days if it means staying alive. You show them how to draw maps with twigs, how to poison an arrowhead with just enough plant to make a Roman officer rethink his life choices. You laugh more than you used to, quietly, but it counts. And somewhere inside that laughter, the grief begins to loosen. You've changed your hair. It's shorter now, practical. You no longer wear the fine furs you once did as queen. Your garments are stitched from rough cloth, patched and repatched. You carry your sword, but rarely draw it. Not because you're afraid, but because you know. The fight that matters isn't always the one where blades cross. Sometimes it's the one where you outlast the winter. And still the forest gives. Wild garlic in spring, berries in summer, chestnuts in autumn, water sweet enough to wash away sorrow. And the fox, victory, still watching, still judging, still leaving muddy paw prints on your bedroll like it owns the place. One morning you find a Roman trinket nailed to a tree, a charm, something protective, maybe a warning from a scouting party, or just a soldier too scared to sleep without leaving something behind. You pluck it from the bark and toss it into the river. You're not afraid of their gods. They should be afraid of yours. So what happens? To you, really? Do you ever return to the lands you once ruled? Do you ever see your people rise again? Or do you grow old beneath those trees, braided into the roots, one heartbeat in 1,000 still pounding beneath the moss? It doesn't matter, because your story has already outlived you, and it's only getting louder. Your life in the wild settles into an odd rhythm, neither fully peaceful nor entirely frantic, a balance on a blade's edge between the past and the unknown. Each day is a quiet rebellion against forgetting, against the slow, creeping weight of history that tries to bury you beneath its dust. You watch the seasons change, not as a ruler surveying lands from a throne, but as a shadow moving through trees, as a breath carried on the wind. Your daughters grow stronger, their faces hardened by cold and hope in equal measure. They learn the language of the forest, the snap of twigs, the rustle of leaves, the cry of a hawk slicing the sky. You teach them what you know, how to fight with words as much as swords, how to outwit rather than outmuscle. The war you fought on the battlefield has shifted into a different kind of battle now. Survival, endurance, legacy. Here's a fact. To settle your mind, despite the Roman claims of complete victory, small pockets of resistance continued to simmer across Britain for years after the rebellion. Bands of warriors, inspired by your courage, took to guerrilla tactics. Hit-and-run strikes, sabotage, and whispers of rebellion in the night. Your spirit became the fuel for these fires, and Rome had to keep armies tied down, patrolling forests and hills that seemed to breathe defiance. Historians still debate how much your uprising genuinely slowed Roman expansion, but there's no denying it left a scar a reminder that Britain was never fully conquered. You're not the only one who feels the weight of that scar. As word of your deeds spreads in secret circles, so do the stories, some true, some wildly exaggerated. They say you had a crown made of nettles that burned like fire. They say your war cry could split mountains. They say you once turned a Roman soldier to stone with a glance. Your daughters roll their eyes at these tales, but you smile quietly. Legends are necessary. They keep the impossible alive. Speaking of impossible, your little fox, Victory, has become a legend too. It seems to vanish and reappear at will, a ghost in the undergrowth. Some say it's your familiar spirit, others a trick of the mind, but those who see it feel an inexplicable surge of courage, a whisper that says, "You are not alone." You never name it, but you talk to it as if it understands. Sometimes you wonder if it does. There's an odd kind of peace in this half-life. The quiet moments when the sun filters through leaves and the air smells of damp earth and distant rain. You allow yourself to rest, even to hope, though hope is a fragile thing when every shadow could be a Roman scout. You still dream of Watling Street sometimes, the thunder of hooves, the clash of swords, the faces of friends lost, and enemies who never blinked. It haunts you, but it also fuels you. One day, you find a new follower at your camp, a young druid, quiet and watchful, who claims to have escaped a Roman roundup. He speaks of dark times ahead, but also of a time when the old ways will return stronger than ever. You listen, because even in exile, you never stop believing in the future. You begin teaching your daughters the secret lore the druid shares, the old magic woven into the land itself, the stories of stones that sing and rivers that remember, of stars that guide the lost and trees that shelter the weary. This isn't just survival anymore. It's resistance. You realize the fight isn't over. Not really. It's just changed shape. From sword to story. From battle to breath. From queen to legend. And so you continue. A shadow in the trees. A whisper on the wind. A flame that refuses to be extinguished. Because some things don't die. They live. They roar. They inspire. No matter how many centuries pass. No matter how many stories are lost or twisted. You remain. A queen who refused to bow. And whose spirit still stirs beneath the British sky. You find yourself settling deeper into the wild than ever before. The trees no longer just shelter but companions. Moss cushions your steps. And the breeze carries whispers you catch like secrets meant only for you. The war has faded into the background hum of memory, replaced by something quieter, an ongoing dance with survival and solitude. Your daughters, now nearly women, move with the ease of those born to the forest. Their laughter carries on the wind, sharp and clear as the crack of a bowstring. Sometimes you watch them from the shadows, feeling pride mixed with a twinge of something like longing. For the world you once ruled, for a future still tangled in uncertainty. Historians still argue whether Boudica's legacy influenced later Celtic uprisings, or if her story was mostly Roman propaganda twisted over time. But in this moment, it doesn't matter. You know the truth lives in the soil beneath your feet and the blood in your daughter's veins. The Romans rebuilt. Londinium rose again, prouder and more fortified than before. The empire sought to erase your name, but your spirit clung to the cracks in the stone. One evening, under a sky smeared with stars, you gather your followers around. A fire, the flames dance in their eyes, reflecting the flicker of hope you still carry. Stories are shared, some about battles fought, others about dreams yet to come. You listen, silent but present, the weight of your past blending with the possibilities ahead. Your daughters share tales of their own dreams, of leading not just warriors, but entire clans into a freer world. You smile softly, knowing the fight has changed but hasn't ended. Your fox, Victory, prowls nearby, eyes gleaming in the firelight. It seems to embody the resilience you teach, quiet, watchful, always ready. You've come to see the fox as more than a mere animal, perhaps a guardian, or a symbol of survival against all odds. And then there's the matter of the forest itself. Locals whisper that the trees remember you, that the very land you walk is sacred, marked by your defiance. Druids tell tales of ancient spirits stirred by your courage, and the winds carry your name like a blessing or a warning. Your daughters prepare for a future you can't fully see but know they will face. You teach them to read the signs in the stars and listen for the messages hidden in the rustling leaves. The rebellion you led on the battlefield has evolved into something more subtle and enduring, a quiet power that lives in stories, in songs, in the hearts of those who refuse to forget. You realize that your war was never just about conquering Rome or reclaiming land. It was about claiming a place for your people, a place where freedom could breathe. And though the empire marches on, that place still exists, woven into the fabric of the land itself. You don't know what tomorrow holds. Maybe it brings peace, or maybe another storm. But you do know one thing: you will keep walking, keep fighting, in your own way. Keep living as the queen who refused to be broken. Because some legends never fade. They only grow stronger. And your story, like the forest around you, is alive, wild, enduring, and waiting. The dawn breaks cold and misty, wrapping the world in a grey shroud that blurs the edges of the trees and softens the sharp lines of memory. You rise with the light, muscles aching from the night's chill but steady. The forest seems to hold its breath with you, as if waiting for the next move in this slow, endless game of survival. Your daughters prepare their bows and arrows, moving with quiet determination that mirrors your own. The years have sharpened their instincts. They are no longer girls, but warriors in their own right. Watching them is bittersweet, pride tangled with the ache of a past that won't let go. There's a strange comfort in this routine, gathering food, setting traps, listening for the telltale rustle that means danger or opportunity. It's a far cry from the roaring crowds and clashing swords of your rebellion, but somehow it's just as fierce. The fight has shifted from open battlefields to the shadows beneath the leaves. You think about the Roman legions, thousands of soldiers in polished armor, their standards flying high. You once faced them head-on, fire and fury in your veins. Now you outwit them, a ghost haunting their borders, a reminder that the wild still holds power Rome cannot tame. Here's a curious fact. Roman soldiers were terrified of certain local superstitions, especially those involving spirits and curses. They carried amulets and charms, often crafted to ward off what they couldn't understand. Your name became part of that folklore, a dark legend whispered among camps to keep nerves steady, or perhaps to unsettle. The forest gives you more than shelter. It teaches you patience. It teaches you to listen, not just to the sounds of the wild, but to the silence between them. It teaches you that survival is not just about strength, but cunning, resilience, and sometimes retreat. Victory, your fox companion, remains a constant presence. It moves with you like a shadow, alert and watchful, sometimes disappearing into the underbrush only to reappear where you least expect. It feels less like an animal and more like a spirit guide, leading you through the fog of uncertainty. One evening, as the sun dips behind the hills, you sit by the fire with your daughters and followers. The air is thick with smoke and the scent of pine. Stories flow, tales of old gods, lost battles, and dreams of freedom. The firelight flickers on your face, casting shadows that seem to dance with the ghosts of the past. You think about what you fought for, not just land or power, but something deeper. A world where your people could live without fear, without chains. A world where the soil beneath their feet was theirs to claim. The Romans may have built walls and roads, but the heart of Britain beats wild and free. And as long as you breathe, that heart keeps pounding. You rise from the fire, the night air cool against your skin. Somewhere in the distance, an owl calls, a haunting sound that echoes through the trees like a question. And you answer it, not with words, but with the steady beat of a warrior's heart. Because even in exile, even in silence, your fight continues. In the rustle of leaves, in the crackle of fire, in the fierce, unyielding spirit of a queen who refused to be silenced. You wake to a day heavy with promise, the sun filtering weakly through the dense canopy overhead. The forest feels different today, almost expectant, as if holding its breath before something unseen. You tighten your cloak around you, the rough fabric familiar against your skin, and prepare to move. Your daughters gather their things silently, eyes sharp with the same fierce determination that once drove you into battle. You watch them, remembering when their hands were too small to hold a sword properly. Now, they're the keepers of your flame, carrying the story forward with every step. The forest is alive with subtle signs, a broken twig here, a faint trail there. You move like a shadow, careful not to disturb the delicate balance of this hidden world. It's a far cry from the roar of battle, but no less urgent. Every moment matters. An intriguing historical note. Roman scouts were trained to track these very signs: broken branches, disturbed soil, unusual animal behavior. But no matter how skilled, they could never quite tame the wildness that you and your people embodied. This unpredictability was your greatest weapon. Your fox, Victory, trails just behind, ears twitching at the slightest sound. Sometimes it pauses to stare into the distance, as if sensing something beyond the visible. You wonder if it sees spirits, or just the flicker of memories left in the trees. Suddenly, a crack in the underbrush. Your daughters freeze, hands moving instinctively to weapons. But it's only a deer, startled and bounding away. You let out a breath you didn't realize you were holding, the tension easing like fog lifting from a valley. You think about the battles past, how the ground shook under the weight of armies, how the air was thick with smoke and screams. That world seems both distant and impossibly close. The scars remain, etched into the land and the people. Historians still debate whether your rebellion was the last great stand of native Britain, or just the beginning of a longer, quieter resistance that simmered beneath Roman rule. Your daughters speak softly about the future, about reclaiming more than just land, but identity and freedom. Their voices carry the same fire you once had, tempered now with wisdom earned in the shadows. You know that the fight has changed, but the heart behind it hasn't. It beats steady and strong, a rhythm that will not be silenced. The sun dips low, casting long shadows across the forest floor. You settle by the fire, the flames crackling and popping like old songs. Victory curls at your feet, eyes gleaming with quiet intelligence. You close your eyes and let the forest's lullaby wash over you. The rustle of leaves, the call of distant birds, the steady beat of your own heart. Because even in exile, even in the quiet, you are still a queen, still a warrior, still alive. The forest morning greets you with a soft, misty light that filters through the leaves like the first whispers of a secret. You rise slowly, muscles still tight from yesterday's long trek, and take a moment to listen. The kind of listening that feels like waiting for a story to begin. Your daughters are already awake, moving through their morning rituals with practiced ease. They carry the weight of their training lightly, but you see the fire still burning in their eyes, a fire you kindled long ago. You follow a narrow trail that winds alongside a bubbling brook, the water so clear you can see the smooth stones beneath like the bones of the earth. It's quiet here, but not empty. Every sound, every shadow is alive with meaning. A historical fact to hold on to. The Iceni, your tribe, were known not only as fierce warriors, but skilled horse riders and traders. Their territory stretched across what's now Norfolk and Suffolk, rich in resources and culture. The rebellion you led shook more than just Rome. It challenged the very notion of power in these lands. Your fox, Victory, slips through the underbrush. Ahead, a flicker of copper and white that seems almost otherworldly. It pauses at the water's edge, drinking carefully, then looks back as if beckoning you forward. There's a strange comfort in this companionship. Victory moves between the worlds of wild and tame, much like you do now. Neither fully free nor fully captured, but always on the edge of something greater. You pause by a large oak, its trunk thick and gnarled with age. The bark is rough under your fingers, and you press your palm against it, feeling the slow, steady pulse of life beneath. It reminds you that even the oldest things can endure, rooted deep, reaching wide. There's a whispered legend that this oak was sacred to your ancestors, a meeting place for druids and warriors alike. You wonder if the same spirits still linger here, watching, waiting. Your daughters speak of rebuilding, not just homes, but communities, of preserving the old ways while finding new paths forward. You see in their eyes the hope that once filled your own, tempered now by experience and survival. The forest shifts. As the day wears on, light dappling the ground like scattered gold coins. You move with it, a quiet part of this living tapestry, your story woven into the threads of leaf and soil. At night, you sit by the fire and share stories with your daughters and the small band of followers. Tales of gods and heroes, of battles won and lost, of dreams that refuse to die. The flames cast dancing shadows, and for a moment, the past and future blend into one. You think about how your rebellion, though crushed, planted seeds that would one day bloom again. The land remembers, the people remember, and so do you. Because even in the deepest exile, even when the world feels cold and uncertain, the heart of a queen beats on. And you listen. Dawn slips in slowly, carrying a delicate chill that creeps beneath your cloak and wakes the senses. You rise from your makeshift bed, muscles humming with the familiar ache of long days lived on uneven ground. Your daughters stir beside you, already preparing for the journey ahead, their faces set with the quiet resolve that never left you. The forest around you is a mosaic of greens and browns, alive with the gentle hum of insects and birdsong that feels almost like a lullaby in the wake of so much turmoil. You move with purpose, the soft crunch of leaves underfoot marking the rhythm of your march. Every step is a reminder. This land is both a refuge and a battleground, a place where history's wounds meet the stubborn promise of new beginnings. An interesting historical point. The Romans were masters of engineering, and after your rebellion, they intensified the construction of roads, forts, and settlements to tighten their grip on Britain. Watling Street, once a route of war, became a highway of control. But you and your daughters know that true control is never as simple as a road or a wall. Victory, your faithful fox, shadows your movements, its keen eyes ever watchful. Sometimes it darts ahead, scouting, then circles back, a silent guardian of the fragile peace you carve from the wild. There's a peculiar kind of peace in this existence. The wild is harsh, but honest. There are no false promises here, no political games or empty speeches, just survival and the slow rebuilding of a life taken apart. You recall tales past, down about Celtic warriors using camouflage, smearing themselves with mud and paint to blend into the landscape, becoming part of the earth itself. Perhaps that's what you have become, part of the forest, part of the shadows, impossible to catch or forget. Your daughters share whispered dreams of the future, of clans reunited, of a Britain where their people can live freely, without fear of the eagle's shadow. They speak with a fire that warms even the coldest nights, their hope a beacon against the darkness. You teach them the old songs and stories, weaving lessons of courage, wisdom, and resilience. Each story a thread in the tapestry of resistance that refuses to unravel. The forest around you shifts subtly as the day progresses, light filtering through the canopy in golden shafts. The scent of pine and damp earth fills your lungs, grounding you in the present, while your thoughts drift between past and future. Evenings are for reflection and quiet conversation by the fire. You share tales of your battles, of victories and losses, of friends and foes who shaped your path. The flickering flames seem to hold the faces of those long gone, their memories, alive in the warmth and crackle. Historians still argue about the exact course of your rebellion, its causes, consequences, and the true extent of its impact. But you know the truth lies beyond the records, in the spirit that still burns within your people. You close your eyes, feeling the forest's heartbeat beneath you, and the steady pulse of your own. The fight continues, not just in the clashing of swords, but in the quiet endurance of those who refuse to be forgotten, because you are still here, still fighting, still alive. The rain comes soft and steady at first, a mist that coats the trees in glistening dew. You wake beneath the shelter of a pine bough, its long needles heavy with droplets that fall in slow, rhythmic taps, like a drummer warming up far off in the hills. It's the kind of morning that seeps into your bones, not from cold, but from quiet. Your daughters are already up, cloaks pulled tight, hair braided back for the day's march. They speak little, saving their strength for the road ahead. You follow suit. There's no need for words when the world around you says so much. You move through a landscape that's turning unfamiliar. The trees are younger here, spaced wider. There are fewer landmarks, fewer sacred groves. You're entering territory the Romans have pushed into, lands they're carving into grids and parcels, stamping order where wildness once reigned. A curious historical tidbit: Roman surveyors, called agrimensores, used tools like the groma and dioptra to map and divide conquered lands into neat squares, forming the centuriation system. They believed geometry could control the earth. But you've walked these forests long enough to know, no line drawn on parchment can tame the soul of a place. Victory pads beside you, its paws leaving no sound, even in the wet. The fox seems unsettled today, glancing over its shoulder, sniffing the air. You trust its instincts. Animals feel shifts humans can't. Something is near. Soon enough, you spot them, smoke plumes rising on the horizon. Not the wild smoke of village hearths, but the tight black curls of Roman camps. You crouch low in the brush, heart steady but alert. Your daughters do the same, eyes narrowed. You count 4 sentries. Their armor glints even in the rain. They look bored, complacent. That's a dangerous thing for a soldier. You whisper instructions, and your small band of followers disperses silently like breath into mist. You're not here to strike, not yet. You're here to watch, to learn. This is the new frontier, the edge of Rome. Historians still debate whether your resistance lingered as scattered skirmishes after your defeat, or if you truly melted into legend and silence. But this, what you're doing now, feels like both. Half shadow, half warning. The kind of ghost an empire can't forget. You track their movements for hours, mapping the rhythm of their shifts, the layout of the camp, the supply paths. You make no noise, you leave no tracks. This is your land, even if they build walls and raise flags. Night falls, and the forest feels heavier. Rain thickens. The firelight from the Roman camp flickers through the trees. You retreat to higher ground, back to safety. Not out of fear, but discipline. You know when to wait. You've learned patience from the trees. By your own fire, your daughters report what they saw. They sketch quick maps with charcoal and bark. They speak of weaknesses, unguarded flanks, lazy patrols, supply wagons left exposed. You nod, saying little. Because someday, you may need to act. The fox curls beside you, tail over its nose. Your followers settle in for the night, quiet but not uneasy. They've seen worse. They've lived worse. But they also know something else. Survival is not surrender. It is the long game, the clever path, the whispered promise that someday the forest will reclaim what was stolen. You close your eyes, the sound of rain lulling you to stillness. The Roman fire flickers beyond the trees, but your own burns hotter in your chest. You are Boudica, queen in exile, warrior in waiting, and the land still remembers. The rain has passed by morning, leaving the world glistening like it's been dipped in glass. The forest smells rich, earth and moss, and something older, almost metallic, like memory itself rising from the ground. You stretch slowly, your joints stiff from sleeping on damp soil, but your spirit steady. Another day begins, and you are still here. Your daughters speak in low tones, packing supplies with practiced hands. You notice the care they take to wrap dried herbs in oiled cloth, nettle for wounds, elderflower for fevers. You taught them that long ago, though they've added knowledge of their own, picked up from woodland elders and scattered healers. The camp is moving today. You've lingered too long near Roman borders, and the tension in the air has grown sharp. Even victory seems restless, darting ahead, then circling back. You follow a stream that cuts through thick underbrush, its clear waters guiding you deeper into the unknown. A small, strange detail. Some Celtic tribes, including yours, used to toss offerings into rivers, swords, jewelry, even food. Not just out of gratitude, but because water was believed to be a gateway to the spirit world. You still catch yourself glancing into rivers as though they might gaze back. The day's march leads you through older forests now, dense, untouched, haunted by the echo of druids who once held council beneath these trees. You pass a circle of stones, moss-covered and half-sunken. Your youngest daughter whispers, "Are they watching us?" You don't answer. You don't have to. You remember a time when druids stood beside you, wise men in bark-wrapped cloaks, offering prayers and prophecies. Some said they were the soul of the resistance, others saw them as relics. Historians still argue whether they truly guided your campaign or were symbolic figureheads used to rally the tribes. You know the truth lies somewhere in between, like so much of history. You set camp by twilight, near a ridge that overlooks a wide, grassy valley. From here, you can see far, watch for travelers, and smell fire smoke before it arrives. Your people move silently. The practice ballet of those who know danger wears many faces. Tonight, the fire is small and well hidden. You roast foraged, roots and dried meat, passing food from hand to hand with quiet reverence. No feast, but no one complains. The forest teaches gratitude in small bites. You speak little, but when you do, you tell the story of the crow and the wolf, a tale your mother told you, a fable of unlikely alliances, of patience and silent strength. Your daughters listen with wide eyes, even though they know the ending. Some stories are worth hearing again. A hawk cries overhead as night settles. A warning, a blessing. You're not sure, but you acknowledge it with a glance skyward. Victory curls near the edge of camp, facing outward as always. Guarding, watching, never fully at rest. You think back to the first time you saw Roman soldiers. How polished they looked, how confident. You've seen many since then. Some terrified, some arrogant, most just tired men caught in an empire's machine. The machine still churns, but not everywhere. Not here, not tonight. And in the quiet, you allow yourself a single, steady breath. You are more than the war, more than the rebellion. You are what remains. The stars peek through cloud breaks overhead, dim and distant, but real. You wonder if somewhere, a Roman general stares at the same stars and wonders if you still breathe. You hope so. Let him worry. The wind changes overnight. It's subtle at first, just a different scent on the breeze, a colder bite at the edge of the morning air. But you've learned to listen to the quiet warnings. The forest never lies. When you wake, the leaves don't rustle the same. The birds are still. Even the stream's chatter feels cautious, like it's whispering something urgent just beneath its normal babble. Your daughters feel it too. They say nothing, but their eyes move more. Their hands hover near knives they once used just for gathering herbs. Victory, your fox, stands stock still, nose raised, tail bristling like a brush dipped in tension. You're being followed. It was bound to happen. After all, the Romans rarely leave things unfinished, and a queen in exile is not a loose end they can afford to ignore. Historical context. After your defeat, Rome doubled down on surveillance across Britain. Governors like Gaius Suetonius Paulinus were given authority to suppress unrest by any means necessary. Entire settlements were uprooted to deny rebels shelter. That relentless eye never blinked. Still, they've waited a long time to try again. Perhaps they think you've grown weak, old, irrelevant. Maybe they believe you've forgotten how to vanish. But you are Boudica. You taught the land to hide you, and it still remembers. You move quickly, efficiently. The camp is broken down in minutes, ashes scattered, footprints brushed away. Even victory's trail is erased. You lead your people south, through boggy lowlands where Roman boots won't follow easily. The marsh swallows sound. It slows you, but it also protects. Reeds taller than men sway in every direction, and the mist clings like a veil. A place that confuses maps. The kind of place where the past gets lost on purpose. There's a theory, one of the more fringe ones, that you never died, that instead of poisoning yourself, you vanished into the fens and lived for decades under another name. Some even whisper that you became a healer, or a druid, or both. You smirk at the thought. The truth? You're not dead, not in the way they mean. By midday, you pause in a half-sunken grove. Your people fan out, not resting, but listening. The forest presses close here, heavy with wet moss and hanging lichen. Every branch could be a spear, every shadow a scout. Then a signal, a whistle, brief, wrong. Your eldest daughter stiffens. They've found you. You don't panic. Panic is for the untested. You turn to the ridge behind you, a narrow uphill pass carved by water long ago. It's steep, full of roots, rocks, and deadfall, the kind of place Romans would hate. You signal, and your followers slip into position. No battle drums, no speeches, just the cold readiness of those who know there's no retreat. The Romans appear like ghosts, silent, efficient, silver glints moving between trees. A scouting party, maybe a dozen. They're expecting easy prey. They do not get it. Your daughters lead the charge. Silent, precise, like twin shadows. They use the terrain. Trip roots, thorn bushes, even a camouflaged pit trap left from last spring. Spears fly. You hear one Roman cry out, short and sharp. Then silence again. Historians still argue over how much guerrilla resistance remained after your rebellion was put down. Some claim isolated incidents, others suggest a quiet, ongoing defiance. This is your answer. It never ended. You don't linger after. The skirmish, the dead are covered with leaves. The living disappear deeper into the swamp. You leave no trophies, no banners, only questions for the next patrol. You reach a hidden clearing by dusk, a place known only to elders and animals. Water seeps up through the grass here, cold and clean. You set no fire. Tonight is for silence. Your daughters sleep close to you. Victory rests at your feet. You listen to the wind again. It's quieter now. Not safe, but quieter. You survived another day. You gave the Empire another bruise it won't soon forget. And as the stars emerge above, veiled and soft, you whisper not a prayer, but a promise. You are still here, and that will always be enough. By morning, the bog has swallowed your tracks like a secret kept too long. Even the trees lean inward here, conspiratorial and close. You move lightly, keeping to high ridges and fallen logs, always alert for the faintest sound that doesn't belong. The air smells faintly of peat and standing water, still ancient, patient. You're not running. You never run. You shift like the tide. You drift through the land with intent, carving unseen patterns where others see chaos. The Romans want straight lines. You are all curve. The Roman scouting party was just a taste. You know more will come. Patrols travel in rotation, like gears in a machine. If one tooth breaks off, the next grinds harder. So today is about repositioning, reassessing, becoming invisible again. A mainstream fact. Roman legions moved with uncanny regularity. Standard marching formations, standardized gear loads, strict routines. Every day at camp, they built walls, ditches, watchtowers. Even rest looked like work. It's part of why. They were so hard to defeat. They weren't just soldiers, they were infrastructure. But their predictability is also a weakness. You've learned their rhythm. You know when they rest, when they eat, when their eyes glaze over from routine. You may not have 10,000 troops, but you have timing and terrain. As you move, your group blends into a new landscape, a stretch of windswept heath, open but deceptively sparse. Scrub grows low, dense enough to crawl through. It's less shelter than you'd like, but perfect for misdirection. You pause to gather scattered shards of black flint from the ground. Sharp, brittle, beautiful. The land still offers weapons, if you know where to look. Your daughters stop at a flat stone and begin shaping some of the flint into blades. Their movements are careful, deliberate. You watch them chip edges with practiced strikes. It's oddly comforting, this act of preparation. As though the land is reminding you that old tools still work. Fringe fact. Some ancient Britons believed flint had magical properties, not just for cutting, but for protection. Some buried it with the dead or wore it as charms against bad spirits. You've seen too much to scoff at such things. Even now, you keep a jagged piece near your heart. You reach a high outcrop by afternoon. From here, the world seems quiet again. The wind tugs at your cloak, and in the distance, you see movement. Distant riders along a Roman road, maybe a half-day's journey away. They haven't seen you. Yet, you settle in. You'll spend the night here, watching, listening, measuring their movements against the clockwork in your mind. Historians still argue whether your military acumen was learned or instinctive. Was Boudica trained by her husband, or did she simply rise to the challenge when fate demanded it? But they forget that survival trains you better than any army. Every year on the run has sharpened your instincts. Your people make camp low and quiet. No fire tonight, just raw roots, foraged herbs, and silence. You take watch, even when they sleep. The stars come out in icy constellations, crisp and uncaring. You trace them with your finger, half remembering the names your mother once whispered. Ancient stories of wolves chasing sisters, hunters lost in the sky. You wonder what the Romans see when they look up. Do they see the same stars? Or does empire blind them even to that? Victory presses close, fur warm against your ankle. It hasn't left your side since the ambush. Foxes don't offer loyalty easily. But this one chose you, like the land did, like the old gods did. You close your eyes. You don't dream, not anymore. Only plans. The morning starts with frost, thin and glittering. It coats the edges of your cloak and gathers along the tufts of dry grass. Even your breath curls white in front of your lips like a lazy ghost, unsure whether to linger. You stand before the edge of the heath, the land wide and quiet beneath a pale sky. And for just a moment, it feels like the entire island is holding its breath. You stretch slowly, carefully. Your bones ache, not from age, but from weight. The weight of waiting. The weight of choices left unmade. There's a heaviness in limbo, in the space between retreat and retaliation. But not today. Today, the weight shifts. Your scouts return before sunrise. 3 of them, silent as shadows, each bringing whispers from the edges of Roman territory. One carries news of a fort, small, vulnerable, newly built. Another speaks of a supply caravan traveling light, unguarded, moving fast between outposts. The third, brings something else. A name, yours, whispered in a Roman camp, spoken with caution. Not Boudica, the defeated. No, Boudica, the ghost. Boudica, still out there. Boudica, the thorn. Historians still debate whether your image was deliberately erased by Rome or simply faded in silence. Scrolls of Tacitus and Cassius Dio survive, but gaps linger. Entire sections where your story seems to flicker. What's missing could fill volumes, yet your legend persists. So you make a choice. The caravan is tempting. Supplies are always useful. But the fort, that's a message, a crack in Rome's illusion of control. You know which path to take. You don't tell your daughters immediately. You just give the signal, a tilt of your chin, a narrowing of your eyes. They know what it means. Everyone does. It's time to remind the world you still draw breath. You move quickly, taking a route through low woods and shale-cut ridges, avoiding open paths. The frost melts by mid-morning, turning the soil soft and treacherous. Still, you press on, and the land makes way. Fringe detail here. Some believe the land itself could favor those who respected it. That trees whispered, rivers warned, and hills hid those they deemed worthy. You've seen enough to believe it might be true. You reach the outer edges of the Roman fort by twilight. It's laughable, really. More a glorified shed than a true stronghold. New timber palisades, still raw and reeking of sap. Hastily constructed. You count 8 soldiers. Green recruits mostly. 1 officer by the cut of his armor. They sit around a fire, tossing bones into a pot, laughing too loud. They're not expecting you. You gather your people in the hush of dusk. There are fewer of you now than in years past, but that's never mattered. You don't need numbers. You need conviction. You need silence. You need the memory of everything that's been taken. Your daughters flank you, cloaked and calm. 1 notches her bow. The other tests the edge of a flint dagger. No speeches are given, no war cries, only breath, only motion. The ambush lasts minutes. A whistle, a strike, a rush of bodies through the dark. You move like the heath itself, low, quiet, relentless. The fire scatters, the pot spills. The officer doesn't even draw his sword. You leave him tied, not dead, a messenger. Let him speak of shadows and foxes and women who walk like storms. Historians still argue whether these kinds of raids truly happened. There's no Roman record of you attacking after your final battle. No parchment that claims you ever struck again. But here's a secret. The land doesn't need parchment. It remembers you just fine. By moonrise, you're gone. Back into the wild. The fort smolders behind you, walls broken, illusion shattered. It's not conquest. It's not a return to war. It's a reminder, a whisper in the dark. You're not a rebellion. You're a rhythm. That night you sleep beneath stars. You barely see through the canopy. The fox curls tight. Your daughters breathe evenly beside you. Your followers rest with the ease of those who know they made Rome flinch. And you? You smile. Just a little. Because tonight, for the first time in years, you feel alive. You awaken before dawn, not to danger, but to music. Soft, natural music. A breeze through birch leaves. The low murmur of a stream slipping between mossy stones. The distant trill of a lark still uncertain about its solo. It's the kind of morning that tries to convince you the world isn't at war with itself. But you remember the fire. The Roman fort, now scattered timber and cracked clay. You remember the officer's face, astonished, afraid, and young. Too young to know what kind of game he was sent to play. You remember letting him live. Because stories spread faster than swords, and you've become a story again. Your people stir one by one, slower now. Not with weariness, but with the strange calm that comes after chaos. A camp that was restless for years is suddenly restful. They whisper. They smile. One even hums. Victory licks dew from a fern and yawns with theatrical laziness. And you feel something dangerous. Hope. Mainstream fact. Even after Roman victory, some tribes continued to resist subtly. Through song, through ritual, through quiet defiance. They wore forbidden symbols, practiced outlawed rites, hid meaning in embroidery and tattoos. Resistance, reduced to thread and whisper. You've mastered that language now. You guide your band toward the hills, toward a place you haven't seen since your children were small. An old cairn, half swallowed by heather and bracken. The bones beneath it are forgotten, but the stone remembers. It's not a grave, it's a promise. Historians still argue whether Boudica was buried, burned, or left to legend. Some say she lies beneath a London train platform. Others claim she was laid to rest beside her daughters in an unmarked field. But you're not here for endings. You've come to remember. The cairn stands alone, tilted and crumbling, covered in moss the colour of old bruises. It was raised by hands long gone, hands that knew grief and pride in equal measure. You place your palm on the stone and close your eyes. You speak no words, but the wind answers anyway. Fringe tidbit. Some Celtic warriors believed cairns could store memory, hold echoes of battle cries, footsteps, tears. That if you listened long enough, you'd hear what was buried. You listen, and for just a moment, you do. You stay through the midday sun, letting your people rest, letting yourself feel the weight of everything that hasn't broken you. The land presses warm against your back. The earth hums gently beneath your ribs. You remember your husband, his calm in the face of Rome, his certainty that the tribe would outlast the empire. You remember your daughters, small and fierce, tumbling over wild grass. You remember the smoke, the chains, the fire of betrayal. You remember your voice, rising above a broken crowd, calling not for vengeance, but for justice. And then you rise, because remembering is not enough. You scatter dried herbs over the cairn, wormwood, yarrow, a pinch of salt, not for magic, for memory, and for the scent. A home smell. Your daughters do the same. You say no goodbyes. You don't need them. That evening, the camp settles beneath a wide sky. The moon is only a sliver, but the stars are fat and generous. Someone tells a joke about a Roman who tripped on his own sandal. Laughter rolls low and soft through the night. You recline on a slope, hands behind your head, and think about something absurd. What if you weren't always on the run? Victory noses into your cloak, sighs deeply, and closes her eyes. You stay awake just a little longer, breathing in stars, half expecting one to fall. None do, not tonight, but that's all right. You've already lit enough fires of your own. You wait to rain. Not a storm, just a steady, whispered drizzle that dampens the bracken and paints your world in shades of grey-green and earth. The kind of rain that doesn't drive you inside, but invites you deeper into the forest. Every leaf carries a silver bead. Every footstep is softened by the sponge of moss and mulch. You move like the morning mist, quiet, slow, unnoticed. Today is not for fighting. It's for gathering, listening, sharpening old tools and older instincts. Even a rebel queen needs to rest. Mainstream fact: tribal Britons were intimately tied to the land, not just for survival, but for identity. Your people knew every tree, every hidden spring, every medicinal root. You didn't occupy the land, you belonged to it. Romans never quite understood that. To them, land was conquered. To you, it was kin. Your group splits for the morning. Some go hunting. Others gather nettle and wild garlic. Your daughters scout the western path where deer trails twist like ribbons. You stay near the glen, overseeing what passes now for peace. Victory climbs a tree and falls asleep. Again. You pluck a dock leaf and rub it between your fingers. Cool, wet, faintly metallic. A good balm for stings. Or for the 1,000 little irritations of living in exile. You smile at the thought. One of the younger warriors brings you something strange. A carved token, bone white and faintly blue. dug from the dirt, shaped like a spiral, but unfamiliar. Not yours, not Roman. From the old ones, he whispers. Fringe tidbit. Ancient British Isles were filled with objects like this. Odd spirals, carved stones, votive offerings, older than your tribe, older than most memory. Some think they were messages. Others say they were just decoration. You say, maybe both. You keep the spiral in your pouch, next to your flint shard. By midday, the sky clears just enough for light to filter through the trees like syrup. Your daughters return with a strange report. Roman scouts, but not on the march. They seem lost or unsure. Less like soldiers and more like men on a leash that's been cut. You nod. Not your concern. Not yet. The Romans are chasing shadows now. You've become uncatchable. Historians still argue whether Boudica vanished into the wilderness after defeat, or whether she took poison, ending her story in defiance. The ambiguity bothers them. Rome likes endings. But wild things don't end neatly. You're not a chapter, you're a cycle. Later, someone brings back a bird. Small, already still, probably hit by a falling branch. A finch, wings tucked in, like paper fans. Your people treat it gently, even in death. A soft grave is dug beneath a rowan tree. You hum something old while they work. It isn't mourning, it's memory. You eat nettle soup that night. It burns just enough to remind you that you're still here. You drink rainwater cupped in curled leaves. You watch clouds drag across the moon like slow sails. Someone plays a hollow reed pipe. 3 notes, repeated, imperfect, lovely. A new scout arrives before midnight. He brings news from a distant hill clan. The Romans are consolidating, rebuilding roads, drawing maps, trying to close their fists tighter. They don't know the land is made of water. You can't hold a stream. You can only drown in it. You thank the scout and send him to rest. He curls into his cloak like a child. You sit alone for a while, sharpening a blade not because it needs it, but because your hands do. This is how you prepare now. Not for war, but for watching, waiting, whispering. The night is cool, damp, gentle. Victory sniffs the air, then buries herself under your cloak without asking. You breathe deeply, and for the first time in a long time you think, maybe survival is enough. Not revenge, not glory, just breath, and earth, and a place to sleep. Morning arrives dressed in fog, thick, low, silver grey and patient. It wraps around the trees like wool, softening the world until you can barely see 5 steps ahead. The forest is muffled. Even the birds seem cautious, their songs tentative, like they're unsure whether the day has actually started. You step out into it anyway, because this is how days begin now. With movement, with breath, with uncertainty. Fog or no fog, you're still the one they look to. You pass a thicket where someone has tied strands of dyed wool, blue, red, and yellow, to the branches. Offerings or prayers, maybe both. One flutters loose and sticks to your cloak. You leave it there. You can never have too much protection. Mainstream fact. The Celts believed in liminal spaces, edges, borders, places between. Fog, twilight, crossroads. These were powerful times and places where the veil between worlds was thinner. Anything might happen. Anyone might return. The fog feels like that now. A door, halfway open. Your daughters walk ahead of you, shadows among shadows. One hums softly, a tune from your childhood you didn't realize she remembered. You don't speak. The sound is enough. Behind you, your people move slowly, carefully. No one wants to break the spell. Fringe tidbit. Some warriors painted their faces with ash and lichen before a raid, not just for camouflage, but to become something else. Something part human, part myth. You never needed paint. Your rage was its own transformation. But today, you do dip your fingers in mud and mark your cheeks. Just 2 lines. For your daughters. For the parts of yourself you thought lost to time. The trail leads upward, through a narrow ravine filled with slick rocks and the smell of wet fern. You remember this path. It's a back route toward the old fort near the estuary, now Roman-held. Maybe, maybe not. Your scouts aren't sure anymore. Historians still debate whether this part of Britannia was ever fully controlled by Rome. The maps say one thing, the stories say another. And the land? The land's opinion has never been asked, but you ask, every time you walk it. And today, the answer feels like a shrug. Halfway up the ravine, you stop. Something's wrong. Not danger, just a shift. A stillness inside the stillness. You raise your hand. Your people halt, trained, silent. And then, a voice. Not Roman, not tribal. A woman's voice, older than you, from somewhere in the fog. Singing. You descend carefully, following the sound. It takes longer than you expect. The mist thickens, around your legs like floodwater. The voice grows clearer, low, rhythmic, soothing and strange. A language you don't recognize, but feel. Then, there she is. She sits on a moss-covered boulder, wrapped in grey wool and rain. Her face is a map of years, and her eyes are pale as bone. She stops singing when you step forward, but doesn't flinch. You took your time, she says. You have no idea who she is. You sit beside her anyway. She speaks slowly, of storms and salt winds and bones hidden beneath rivers, of dreams that bleed into waking life, of Rome falling, eventually, far away. But not yet, not here. It's not prophecy, not exactly. It's just knowledge. Some people hold history the way others hold a knife. She holds it like a spoon, measured out, stirred gently, fringe detail. In some Celtic traditions, women called seers or wise ones lived apart, on the edge of clan life. Not quite priestess, not quite exile. Their names are lost, but their echoes remain. One sits beside you now. When she finishes speaking, she takes your hand. Her fingers are cold. She presses something into your palm. A thorn. Long, sharp, almost black. Remember who you are, she says, and then she vanishes into the fog, like a dream. You return to your people in silence, the thorn still in your hand. You tuck it into the pouch with the spiral token and the flint. Memories, sharpened. Later that night, you stare into the fire as the fog finally lifts. Someone cooks trout. Someone else tells a story about a Roman who mistook poison hemlock for parsley. Everyone laughs. But your eyes stay on the flames. Not afraid, not uncertain, just focused. Because you remember who you are. Not just a queen, not just a ghost. You're the thorn, still sharp, still waiting. A river lies ahead, wide, sluggish, wrapped in reeds and morning mist. It's the sort of river that doesn't look dangerous until you try to cross it. It hums with lazy menace, dragging silt and secrets beneath its calm surface. You've crossed it before, but not in peace. Today, you try for peace. The sky is pale, washed bone with no promise of sun. A few gulls wheel above the water, calling out like lost travelers. Your people stand at the bank, quiet and watchful. One of them tosses a pebble into the river. It disappears with a gulp. You narrow your eyes. Something's different. Mainstream fact. The Romans often built fords and temporary bridges across rivers like these to move their forces faster. But when they left, or were chased off, nature took it all back. Roads sank, wood rotted, rivers meandered again, unbothered. The river here swallowed its ford years ago. What remains is memory and mud. You send a scout downstream to search for a crossing. The rest wait, kneeling to fill water skins, tightening packs. Victory slinks to the edge, sniffs, then sneezes theatrically. She does not approve of wet paws. You crouch beside her, watching the current twist like lazy smoke. There's something about the river today. It feels heavy, full of stories. So you listen. Fringe tidbit. It's said that rivers can carry not just water, but history. In Celtic ritual, important offerings, blades, jewelry, even human hair, were often cast into rivers to seal vows or ask for favor. Some say the river decides whether to grant the request or not. You don't throw anything in. Not yet. The scout returns with news. There's an old willow tree half a mile down, and beneath it, stones laid across the water. Not exactly a bridge. More like stepping stones someone forgot to finish. But it'll do. You walk in silence. The path is narrow and sun-dappled, the undergrowth brushing against your legs like restless thoughts. At one point, you think you hear someone laugh. High, soft, and familiar. But when you turn, there's only your daughter. She tilts her head, frowns, then shrugs. You walk on. Historians still argue whether Boudica ever crossed into Western tribal lands after her revolt. Some claim she died before reaching them. Others insist she vanished into those very woods, welcomed by sympathetic clans who shared her fury and her fear. The truth is likely buried beneath too many layers of time. But today, you walk through those lands. You are welcome here. At the willow tree, the stones glisten with moss and mist. You test the first one, solid, slippery. You motion for the others to wait while you cross first. One step, then another. Your reflection trembles beneath you, distorted, uncertain, a ripple of who you once were, or might be again. You don't look down after that. You just cross. On the far side, you help the next person across, then the next. Your daughters follow, balanced and sure. One slips but catches herself with a laugh. You don't laugh. You reach for her hand anyway. Once everyone's over, you pause. You turn back to the river and remove one thing from your pouch, the spiral token. Blue-tinged bone. Unknown. Unnamed. You whisper a word you haven't used in years. Then you toss it into the water. It vanishes. The river doesn't react, but you feel lighter. That night, camp is quieter than usual. Not tense, just thoughtful. Someone starts a low song. A war song, yes, but slower now. Sadder. It's not about rage anymore. It's about memory. You sit near the fire and draw, shapes in the dirt with a stick. Not symbols, just marks, tracks of thought. Your daughters lean against each other, half asleep, their shoulders rising and falling in the same rhythm. Victory lies stretched beside them, paws twitching, dreaming of squirrels probably. And you? You stare into the fire, not seeking vision, not demanding answers, just watching the flicker and fade, because something is ending, not your fight, but your need for it. Later, under a sky stitched with stars, you lie awake and count each breath as though it's a coin spent wisely. One breath for your people, one for the land, one for everything that didn't break you, and one for the river, still carrying pieces of you downstream. The forest opens like a secret. You emerge from the tangle of oak and thorn into a high, grassy ridge overlooking everything. Wind lifts your hair. You feel it first in your chest. A slow exhale you didn't know you'd been holding. Below, the land unfolds in soft hills and scattered groves, fields gone wild and streams threading silver paths through the green. No Romans in sight, no smoke, no screams. Just the world, unbothered. You sit in the tall grass and let the wind talk. It doesn't speak your name, not exactly, but it remembers. You feel it in the way the stalks bend around you, how they don't flatten so much as welcome. There's a silence here that isn't empty. It's full, holding something sacred. Mainstream fact. Ancient Britons believed certain places were thin, where the veil between the living world and the spirit world wore away. High hills, sacred groves, misty ridges like this. These weren't just vantage points, they were thresholds. You're standing at one now. The others catch up slowly, moving like ghosts across the grass. No one rushes. Even Victory trots quieter, ears perked toward nothing. Your daughters stop beside you and sit without speaking. One lays her head on your shoulder, The other leans on your knee. This is what peace looks like now. No trumpets, no declarations, just stillness. Fringe tidbit. Some say Boudica's grave is here, beneath a mound near a forgotten road, marked only by a line of hawthorns. Others say she was never buried at all, just became part of the land. Her voice the wind, her bones the roots. You're not sure which you prefer. Historians still debate your fate. Some say you took poison, regal to the last. Others claim you fled to the north and lived among friendly clans under a different name. A few even argue you returned to Roman lands in disguise, hiding in plain sight as a servant or seer. You shake your head. Let them argue. You know the truth. You didn't die. You changed. You reach into your pouch and run your fingers over the flint shard, the thorn, the bone spiral that isn't there anymore. Each piece a version of you, each one carrying a battle, or a scar, or a choice. Today you add nothing. No trophies, no keepsakes. Just a breath. You let the pouch rest beside you in the grass. Your people begin to settle. Small fires flicker into life. Cooking, warmth, comfort. One group builds a ring of stones, not for defense but for marking something. A memory? A camp? A new start? Doesn't matter. It's theirs now. Someone plucks a stringed lyre. Soft, hesitant notes. Your daughters begin braiding each other's hair, trading stories, and jabs. You hear one of them joke about how they'll rule after you. The other says, "Rule what?" They both laugh. You laugh too, quietly, because they've already ruled something far greater than land or people. They've ruled grief, and they've won. As dusk creeps in, the hills darken at the edges, and a golden hush settles across everything. You stand, one more time, and walk to the ridge's edge. Look out, look down. There, far in the distance, you see them. A Roman patrol, tiny as ants, marching in straight lines, carrying standards that flicker like dying embers in the fading sun. You could go to them, surrender, fight, speak, but you don't, because you no longer need to. They don't see you. They don't even know you're here, and that's your power now. You return to your fire, your tribe, your daughters. No more running, no more burning, just living. That night, the stars wheel overhead like they always have, cold and steady and strange. You lie in the grass, the flint under your head, the wind your lullaby, and you let sleep take you slowly. Not because you're tired, but because for once, or home, you can. Wind down, 300 words. So now, you let your body settle deeper. You feel the last light of the fire trace across your skin in soft, drowsy waves. Your arms, your legs, they grow, heavier with each breath, sinking into the earth like old roots rediscovering the soil. Your story tonight didn't end in glory, didn't end in blood. It just shifted. And sometimes that's what survival is. A quiet change, a silent edge, a whispered name only the trees remember. You were Boudica, queen of a vanished flame. But you were also wind, grass, thorn, bone. You weren't defeated, you dissolved. And now, with the world finally still, your thoughts can soften too. Let the noise of empire fade. Let the battles slip downstream like the spiral token lost to the river. Let even your name loosen its grip, just for a while. You're safe here, in this story. You're unseen and untouched, wrapped in fog and song and sleep. The stars above turn slowly, too slowly to see. The night deepens. The rhythm of breath slows. Soften your eyes. Unclench your jaw. Let the silence carry you. Let the dark cradle you. Let the dream begin. Sleep now, and forget the weight of the crown, the crack of whips, the fire in your throat. Let it all float away on the wind. Your home. Let it all float away on the wind. Your home.